You're not there. Yeah. I don't know. Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I have 10 a.m. I have 10 a.m. if we can start. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in today. Earlier in the year, the commission decided that they wanted to have a workshop in the summer to be able to discuss what the legislative process looks like and how the village can set its priorities for any request or anything like that for state appropriations or for supporting or not supporting any bills that may come forward. So with that, we have David Carcerta. He represents the village in Tallahassee during session. Many times there are committee meetings that will happen in our schedule just a couple days in advance, if that, and any of those type of bills, whether it's us requesting funds or something that could affect the way that the village operates, then having that representation there in Tallahassee is vital. Because we're so far removed, or at least an 8 to 9 hour drive away, it becomes virtually impossible for the village to be able to be in attendance for anything in those type of meetings. So David represents our interest while he's there. So with that quick introduction, and I would like to state with his help, the village was able to receive $350,000 that is going towards the stormwater and road resurfacing projects that we have ongoing at the moment. That is, without the state appropriations, I'm not sure how the village would have been able to afford it. So with all that work, thank you, David, for being here on Saturday with us, and take it away. You can just make sure that the microphone is on. A long time. There you go. No, green light's got to be on. Okay. No. There you go.
Hello? Yes. Okay. First of all, thank you, Mayor, Commissioner. Right here, this way, better? Okay. So it's always been a pleasure. I was just talking to Commissioner Sumerian. It's always been a pleasure to represent Biscayne Park. I've always had, great memories here, beginning many years ago, probably over 18, 19 years ago. And every time I come through Biscayne Park to come here, it's great memory because I used to go to Miami Country Day School, and my nieces and nephews used to go to St. Rose. And so I used to frequent this area, go to lunch every day. And it was just always a wonderful experience. And, over the years, I made a commitment, especially to Biscayne Park, to make sure that if I'm representing them, that I would represent them in the best possible way that I could, and always try to achieve the goals that they set forth. And I think we've done a really good job at doing that. So thank you very much, Mario, for your comments. And yes, I wanted to mention, very proud this year of what we've achieved with the stormwater projects, $350,000, and we're going to hopefully move forward and continue to try to find funds that we need to accommodate projects that we might not be able to fund through the budget. We also had a great opportunity this year because as part of the budget, a local House local grant was established. And that came out of nowhere for a lot of folks, unless you were really following it. And it allocated about $175 million to projects that might not have made it in the budget or maybe were vetoed, as the House put it. And a portion of that would be going to the first responders as well in the different communities. And so I know I spoke to Mario about that, and he's been, I guess, working with the state on those funds. But a good portion of those funds are going to projects, and so we have submitted another project, which is the recreation project and parking for the rec building over there for another $250,000, I believe it was. And so we are submitted it. We have gotten our sponsor. We have the attestation forms are in place. And the process now is that they will review those projects. It'll go to the Legislative Budget Committee for approval. And it is my understanding that that's it. If they approve it, we're good to go on that. But once again, it's not a big amount. There's a lot of projects, so there's no guarantees. But we figured we put one in anyway and see what we can do to try to get us some more money if we can.
So, Dave, quick question for you on that. You said you got a sponsor for it. What does that mean, and who is it?
Okay, and I'll go through that as I go through what I was told was the purpose for today. And it's Dottie Joseph is our representative here. And she is the one that actually put the project in, and we'll be working together on that as well as with, members of the legislature, because as you will find out in my in what I'm about to tell you, even though each community has its representatives and senators, one each, who assist and usually sponsor the projects, these bills go through several committees. And so we have to constantly lobby the members of those committees. Remember, each one of those legislators that represent us has probably 5 to 8 different cities that they've got to support. So they're not going to favor one over the other. So it's up to us to do our due diligence and do our work to get it done. And then they, put in their 2 cents and assist in when they can in their committees to try to move it forward. So it's a collaborative a work effort up there. And so we've had great relationships with everyone that's represented us here at the village. So so it is Dottie Joseph.
So when you made that request of the state, do you look, I'm just kind of interested in the process. Do you look for a sponsor? Do you go to our representative? Did you go to Dottie Joseph?
Yes, that's my job. But basically, the manager's role here, and usually it's similar in every city, is the government relations person will work directly with the manager to carry out the goals of the commission. So the manager will come to the commission at certain points when required or the commission will say, hey, city manager, town manager, we need this, we need that. Then he'll decide, okay, is that a county effort? Is that something that Dave will handle up at the state efforts? And we'll have conversations about this and talk about the realistic, the possibilities of those projects getting in. So, and then anything that happens in the state, it's my responsibility. So I guess I'll begin with just a little layout of the process and how it works, and it'll give you a good understanding of why we do things at certain times of the year and why we ask for certain meetings at certain times. So there's two important things to understand. A few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, the state said that on the even years, they were going to begin session in January. And on the odd years, they begin in March. It traditionally always started in March for 60 days. And so that made a difference in how companies, municipalities, whoever is represented up in Tallahassee approach with regards to their issues, their policies, their budget issues. And here's why. Because, for example, this year is an even year. So we had session in January. So when we began our process of putting together our projects, it happened in around September, October. And so we needed to, get a good understanding of where the village, sat with regards to those projects so that we can then begin to put those projects into the mix, because committee meetings session doesn't just start and they go through 60 days. It starts months before, a couple months before, because they have to hold committees to have some of these projects go through their committees so that they're prepared for the 60-day session, so that what they're doing in the 60-day section is basically hearing out the last part of those committees and those projects so that they can get it to the floor for a vote and then ultimately to the governor within 60 days. This year, in 2023, it will begin in March. And so what'll happen is, and the reason is there's an election in November and there's a primary on August 23rd. So from our standpoint, we have time now. So we don't have to rush into getting any of our, projects on the table or anything like that. I'll give you my thought process as to when you should probably, look at that. But right after the primary, we go to the November election, and right after the November election, that's when we know who's actually going to be here, whether our incumbents are coming back or whether there's going to be new folks sitting in the House and Senate seats. And then right after that, they have an organizational session in late November, which basically brings everybody together, makes it official, and then they begin the process. So sometime in late November, early December is when they start the committee meetings for the March session. So understanding that, from our standpoint, we have, there's two avenues, two roads, I guess you can say, up in Tallahassee. There's the policy, and then there's the budget and the financing. Traditionally, the state of Florida, they could go throughout the whole session and not pass one bill, but they have to pass the budget. And so the budget is obviously one of the most important bills. And it's funny because the budget is the one that usually gets handled in session and towards the end of session. The policies usually start first. So if we ever had any policies, then come, I would say in an election year, I'd say probably October, we should probably begin to identify anything that we might want to have as a municipality from a policy standpoint. We usually don't. There's usually, because the state usually comes up with, as you know, hundreds of policies against the municipalities and counties that we're always fighting against. And then we go and try to, input and put our changes in there to make it better on the impact for our cities, especially for the smaller cities. I'm always fighting to exempt smaller cities and let the bigger cities fight it out. And usually we're successful at that. So once you have that process, once you know what your policies are, then we go ahead and identify a sponsor. And when I say sponsor, that means we have to find a House sponsor and a Senate sponsor, because a bill has to have sponsors on both sides. And not only that, but the language by the time it gets to the end of the committee, has to be exactly the same. Sometimes the Senate will have a different version, House will have a different version. They have to clear those versions up and make them similar before it gets to the governor. So that's why they go through committees. And when a bill gets filed by one of our sponsors, it goes to the speaker, goes to the president, and then they, in their committees, they go ahead and identify how many committees it will be referred to. And the way we know how a bill looks in the legislature is if it gets referred to 4 or 5 committees, you know that that's not something that leadership wants. If it gets referred to 1, 2 committees, 3 committees, then you know that's a bill that has potential. And so sometimes you won't hear from us about what's being filed until later, because you don't really want to put any effort into something that's not going to happen. You want to really focus on the things that will. And so this year, you won't really know until after November what bills are being filed or what issues are being had. Now, the Florida League of Cities, we work very close with, and they, over the years, like Scott, who is one of their government relations person, he works with certain lobbyists, and I've been one of them over the years, where it's just so much that they ask other people to help in this process. And since our issues are related, we always try to help wherever we can. So they will usually put out just a little agenda in November or so forth that sort of says, okay, if this bill comes up, we oppose it. If this comes up, we support it. And they give you sort of like what could happen. It's never accurate because you really don't know, because you don't know who's getting elected. But it's a nice thing to review because you can see maybe some of the issues that might be coming up. But then as the issues start to come up, as the bills are filed, then you will get a report. You'll send something that say, oh, the following bills have been filed that impact municipalities. Now, by the time I send that, they could be already being heard in their first committee, but that's fine because you have 2-3 committees that you can go ahead and get, you've got a lot of people either going against the bill or going for a bill. So we have plenty of time to put whatever we need to protect us into that. And that's what we do. That negotiation begins. If we see it starts getting a little rough on a bill, that's when you see the urgent calls. Write to your legislators, call your senators. We need to really try to slow this down. And so that's why every once in a while on certain bills, you'll see these kinds of requests from us or from the Florida League. So that is in an election year. Now that's for the policy. As far as the budget is concerned, the budget really doesn't get formulated like in December and January. That's when they'll start asking for the agency budgets. So the agencies will present a budget and they'll say, here's what we're looking to fund. And then the committees, they have the appropriations committees. Budget has to go through appropriations committee, whether it's healthcare, education, then it has to go through the regular appropriations committee, and then it has to pass that, go onto the floor, and the House has to pass it. And so those are the stages of the bill going through. And they made a change with regards to individual appropriations for municipalities. They required them to be put into a bill. The House side did. So it has to be put into a bill, which is why you always see me ask you for to fill out the form. Mario fills out the form. We submit it. We get our sponsor. They assign it to a committee, and then we have to get it out of one committee before it's eligible for funding. Once it's eligible, that's it. Then basically the bill stops because now they're putting together the budgets. Now they're trying to, each committee will present their own budget. The governor will present his version. And then they will go ahead and once their budget is established, then that goes to the appropriations committee. Now, during each one of those, they give you a little time that if yours didn't make it, you can do an amendment and try to get it in the next committee. Very rare in the House that they will allow that unless so you really have to get it in at the committee level, at the appropriations committee level, or else at the appropriations level, they won't. And the reason why they don't is because they know it's all going to conference anyway, because the Senate's not going to come up with the exact budget. Senate does the same thing, but the Senate gives you a little leeway. I've put stuff in at the committee level, at the appropriations level, and then once you get it in, it goes onto the floor, they approve it. As long as our project is in one side or the other, we're good, we're eligible. That's the goal. So my goal in the initial stages is to get our project into both or one side or the other. And then we begin to move forward to what is called conference. Now, conference doesn't happen until the end of session, which is why you always see the ruckus at the end. Why are we waiting that long? That's just the way it is. They go through conference, and conferences, the Senate and House have to meet together on other major issues like healthcare, education, funding, and then they have to meet together on the projects too. So they go through a week of committee meetings, and that's why you'll see me. Mario gets calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're still there actually going through these meetings sometimes, 9 o'clock at night. And let me get off of this real quick, but I have to give kudos to Mario because he has done an amazing job in providing information when we need it. Because up there, as you know, once they request information, you can't wait a week. You can't wait it has to get to them immediately. And he's put it together and he's given us all the information, and that has also assisted us in getting what we've gotten over the years. So thank you to Mario on that as well. And I know the mayor, you've been very active on issues and local issues too, and you've conversed with a lot of our legislators as well on our issues. And I want to thank you for that because believe it or not, a lot of mayors don't. And so I want to thank you for that as well. So it's a team effect here. It works when you have a good team, things happen. Now going back to the process. So once it comes out of conference, that's the last meeting of conference. When you see your project in there, we're happy. That's when Mario gets the call. We made it. And so this year I was able to call him at 10 o'clock at night and say, we're in, we got 350,000. And he was like, really? No, tell me. No, tell me tomorrow. Make sure. But yes, it's good. So now they put that budget on the table and it gets laid on there for 72 hours. Why? Because they want everything cooled down. They want people to be able to read it, understand it. And then they have discussions when they come back towards the end of the session, usually the last 2 days of session. They talk about the budget, they vote on it. And as long as the House and Senate have a majority vote on the budget, it passes. Then they wait, because now the governor's got to go through it and with his staff to see which project he wants to veto. And then when he's ready, then he calls the budget over because he has 15 days after he gets the budget to sign it. And so that's why you always see the vetoes come out right at the day he signs it, because he already knows. So that's how the budget works. That's how the legislature work. And then when we do it in the even years, then like I said, the committee meetings are going to start like in August, October. So we're going to come before your budget hearing and ask you, okay, what are some of your priorities? And at that point, when you give the priorities, give all your priorities. And then Mario and I will sit down and discuss, okay, this is something maybe the county can do. Here's maybe a grant can do this. Here's the 2 or 3 or 1 that we want to do at the state level. And it gives us the flexibility to do that. So this year, I would say sometime after your budget hearing, which I think is after September, correct? Yeah. So in August sometime, I would then sit down amongst all of you, you all just sit together and say, okay, what are our priorities? What are some of the things we need now that we've done the budget? Here's some of our weak spots. Here's what we need. Put those together. And then once you do that, then I will be able to sit with Mario and talk about which projects we need to create, at the state level, which we might do at the county, and what might get accomplished through grants.
Yeah, now that you explain all of that, are you going to let us know items that you have brought up that went nowhere? Because I look at it as, okay, you have done, this is an example. And as I said to you, that I was one that voted against having, your agency, not you personally, but you guys go up to Tallahassee. And I'm the first one to admit that I was wrong, because you have accomplished what you said you were going to do.
Thank you.
But there's, like you said, there's going to be one year you might have no projects done, but that doesn't mean you wasn't working at the time. So are you going to be able to give us a report on projects that you have brought up there that didn't get anywhere?
Well, okay. So sometimes, like, for example, in the past, I think there's been once or twice where we've had projects and either we didn't get it or the governor vetoed. And so I come back and I share that information with you. But what I've always done is and Mario knows this, I've always tried to find other sources. So example, I know we have the generator was something we needed. I'm still working to try to get the generator from EOC, the Emergency Operation Management Center, because sometimes they have discretionary dollars. And sometimes we might hit a lucky run and they're like, yeah, we have a few dollars, we'll give it to you. So even if I didn't get it during session, I'm still trying to work other avenues to try to secure it. I know we've done that with grants on a couple projects. So I'm always looking for something. But yes, I'll always report whether we've done it or not.
Okay.
And I'll always, like I said, give you a report on what bills are being, filed once we know, and what bills I think we probably want to engage on. But I will recommend this, because like I said, Florida League does a great job. They come up with as the bills are filed, I don't know if you have the access to that, at the Florida League page. You just go there, go to advocacy, and then bills, and they'll show you a list of bills that have been filed, what's going on. So if you just on your own have other bills of interest to you and you want to look, you can go there, look at it, look at the number and see what that bill's about.
Does it hurt us if we have so many projects that we want to get? I think if we put 10 projects and we get 1, it's acceptable, but some legislators don't like when
No,
it's
and
items.
I'll tell you why we try to be specific to 1, maybe 2, because they are filing 1 for, most of the legislators are having to file anywhere between 10 and 20 projects. And when they get at the end, when they are approached by leadership and they say, okay, what's your priority? They got to prioritize 3 of those or 4 of those. So we always try to go with the ones that we think are priority for the village.
Yeah, because I think if we have too many projects listed,
It dilutes it.
that would turn me off
Yes.
as a legislator and say, wait a minute, Biscayne Park has 15 projects. Realistically, they're only going to get 1 or 2.
Yes,
They just list the other ones to wait. I say waste our time.
you are correct. You are
To me,
correct.
as a legislator, I would say you're wasting my time when you're putting 10, 15 projects.
Yes. Now, example is this year. We got the one, we were looking at 2, but then we're like, this one's probably more because I think they're going to fund water, and they did. And so we got that. But then this new pot of money came up and we're like, okay, let's throw another one in.
Oh,
That's fine.
yes.
They don't mind that, you know what I mean? And then we sort of had a different approach this year too. And I've worked with our legislators because Chevron Jones, Senator, and Dottie Joseph, Representative, you know, we have to work with leadership too. And so they were open to that and they worked with leadership. And I think that helped us too. Where, you know, sometimes, you know, we're human, the process is human. And sometimes up there, they play games with each other and, you know, oh, you did this to me, I'll do this. Yeah, but we have to get around that. That's my job to try to find ways around that because I've got to get, you know, in the end on our appropriations, I've got to get at least 20 to 25 legislators to approve our project.
Because this commission and the last commission, we didn't have a lot of projects on it, which was good. We paid attention to the ones what we really
Right.
want. I just want to be sure that we don't have a whole bunch of projects,
No,
hoping that we're going to get one or two.
no, that's not the odd, that's not the game you want to
No,
play up there.
They know that and they don't like it. I mean,
Yes.
I've spoken to legislation. They said, don't put a lot of projects on because if you put 10, 15 projects, that's going to turn us off.
Yes, like we were talking before, in business, you do that because you,
Business,
okay, if I, you know,
wow.
my dad always said, throw enough on the wall, something will stick.
Now, in business, you do that, but in government business, you can't do that because they don't
Yes,
like it.
correct, correct.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and Nick, like I said, just continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you.
For, like I said, I voted against giving, you know, your agency, not you personally, but your agency
Right.
to do it. And I'm first one to admit when I'm wrong. So it was
Yeah,
work.
that means a lot. I really
Um,
appreciate that. And you
hopefully-
can always call me anytime you need to call, you know that.
Hopefully,
so.
you know, we're going to be having a lot more projects that we can do.
Wonderful.
But again, I just wanted to make that public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, can you go over the timing again? You were talking about the time of what you want us to accomplish for you and when you want it done. You were talking
Yeah.
about we had to have our budget done by the end of September. Then you said August, you want us to have our
No, so
the month of August, and I wasn't sure.
no, not, that was for the previous, that's when session is in January, then August is when we start doing it. But this year it's an election year. So nothing will happen till after November. So my thought process is get through your budget process because that's intense as it is. Get through that, see where you stand. And then in October, I guess, have your meeting where you decide what your priorities are. And then let me know, or let, you know, obviously let, because the next meeting, I think we're also going to bring Chevron Jones and Dottie Joseph here just to give you a little update. So they'll be here for that next meeting. But after that, once we get those projects, then we can sit down, I can sit down with the manager and say, okay, this is best place for this. This is for this. I don't think we can get this. And it just makes it a lot easier. And then I can go ahead and be prepared when they start to open up the appropriations process for us to begin to file those forms. So that would be in October this
So
year.
at our October, we have one meeting a month. At our October meeting,
And yeah, it's when you
have
could
on
do
the
it.
agenda
Yeah.
to finalize what we give to Mario for him to work on with you, and then you guys report.
That would be good timing.
Which means, guys, we need to start working on that, you know, now, so we're prepared to finish the conversation in October. So I guess, Mario, oh, I'm sorry. So if we need to have that done in October, we need to start working on that soon. And I guess we're going to discuss some things today. I'm hoping everyone brought ideas today so we can discuss it without deciding on anything. And then that gives us 2 more commission meetings, August and September, to hash it all out and be prepared to finish it in October. And then from there, Mario, you take it, right?
Yeah, I would just caveat to that, and I know it's going to be a little bit different from what David is saying, but because we have elections this year in November, one of the major aspects that we need to do is be able to see what those results are. Because if you have a major turnover on what the leadership structure is at Tallahassee, the way that the state legislation leadership has been moving over the past several years may be different. And so one of the key reasons why we were able to get 350,000 is because they have been sticking to a bring us water projects. Water projects are important. So when we were able to tie the stormwater projects to our request, then that made it easier for them to say, okay, this is something that we can approve. However,
That
that might
aligns with what
change.
they're thinking.
Right. So that might change. So my recommendation for this year is actually waiting until after the elections. So it really won't be until the December meeting where I think we need to start saying, okay, this is going to be the priorities that we go. We can start discussing that early. You know, we have a budget workshop on the 18th. That can be a portion if you guys want to talk about that. We have the budget meetings. We have the August commission, the September commission. We can also discuss on October and November, but I think in December, if the commission wants to take a vote or give clear direction as to which projects we want to push forward. And I will, again, a lot of times, because of where we are and the size of the municipality and what our request amount is, we need to try to align as much as possible. We've got a ton of projects that we need.
Align with the state.
Yeah, with the state and what our representatives are going to be willing to do, right? And so this year we took an orthodox approach to the state appropriations, where we worked with several members of the state legislation, not just those who represent us at Biscayne Park, to try to ensure that we were able to get something approved. And it wasn't an easy process. At one point, they had cut the project completely off. And David was able to go back, talk with the committees. They brought half of it back. And then during the budget cycle, David was able to work on the Senate side, and they brought the whole project back, our entire funding request. They brought it completely back. So it's a constant moving goalpost that we have to try to continually hit. And then once it got approved, rumor was governor was going to veto. And he vetoed a lot of projects, a lot of small projects. But at the end of the day, the efforts that David and I took, we personally called and emailed every single key staff member in his administration, from chief of staffs to topic chief of staffs to their deputy chief of staffs, lieutenant governors, topic chief of staff to the lieutenant governor. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 more that are not coming to mind.
Leadership
In both the House and the Senate. Thank you, David. So we did everything we possibly can. There's no guarantee that next year that type of strategy will work, simply because we don't know who's going to be there. But assuming the same players are there and still in control, we now have to see what's the temperature like, where are they going? Because remember, one of the key rumors going on is that in 2024, our governor might be doing a presidential candidacy. So this upcoming year, even though it's an election for the House and the Senate, if that's actually in play, and we'll see that, especially next year, how that kind of plays out. But if that starts coming into play, the entire mind shift of what he wants the budget to look like and what he will approve might completely change. And it could benefit or it could be detrimental. It all depends on what those strategies look like. And if both the Republicans control both House and Senate, which they've done for quite a while now, if the governor is going to be running for a presidential candidacy, and I'm not an expert in this field, I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous, but I'm not an expert. They're going to support that candidate and that governor as much as they possibly can with essentially whatever he wants, because if he gets into the White House, that's going to open up a lot more doors for Florida. So you're going to see that kind of rallying behind. So again, right now, where it might be more of a moderate approach, where, yeah, we'll work with, certain individuals on the other side, and we can work with these candidates, and we can kind of all of those things. When they, round up or they corral the troops to support someone, sometimes if we're not in line with that, we're going to be left out on the dark, and it's just politics. That's how it goes.
But in the meantime, we can work on our priorities, and then at a certain point, you guys take them from there at some point anyway, and then you figure out, okay, which ones are possible here from our short list.
Yeah, the good thing is for us,
give you a short list, and you guys figure out what's feasible, who's going to support
correct
it, and what you think you might get done.
Because I definitely think, I like the idea that I agree with you, Commissioner Kennedy. We have to pick items that we want.
Right.
Well, we also have to pick items that have a good chance of passing. Because like you said, there's a good possibility, that he's going to be running for president. So, we want to line up with them. I don't mean take stuff that we don't support just to get them to support items, but I want it to be,
Yeah, the reality is we're more than 20 years behind in our stormwater
yes. I agree.
road. And I think for us, that has to be one of our top priorities,
I agree.
given global warming, given the flooding we just recently had and the ground saturation. So it happened over and over again. And how expensive those projects are. $350,000 is
Nothing.
wonderful, but it doesn't cover for more than one drain. I don't think it even covers for one whole drain. So we've got some federal dollars we've got in there, but I think we're just going to have to keep plugging after the stormwater. The other thing I've been hearing is trying to make our village buildings solar. So just to plant that seed in your head, if there's any grants to make municipal buildings solar, anything that you know of, I think that would be a wonderful thing for this village. And, and I think in the long run, that's going to help with the environmental issues that we're all facing now and will be facing more later in the future.
Commissioner Hammelberg, you're absolutely right. The good thing when talking priorities is that Biscayne Park, it's almost pretty easy to put that priority list together for us because right now it's all infrastructure, different types of infrastructure, right? We just submitted when they did that small project grant that we submitted for, they wanted a one-time type of project. Okay, our parking and some of the playground equipment and stuff like that, that's like a one-time thing. So yeah, we had something basically ready, right? That we can just say, hey, here we are. But infrastructure continues to be the main aspect of whether it's stormwater, whether it's updating infrastructure for the buildings, going solar, finding ways to do other type. It all kind of falls under that same umbrella. So then it's just identifying what are the key projects. And last year, the commission was presented, if we're going to do all these stormwater projects, we broke it down into several different phases. And those phases are essentially about 25 years worth of projects based on how we can get funding. And so it's just, okay, what's the next one? Maybe we're not asking for construction dollars, we're asking for design dollars, which is equally, costly. And then it's like, okay, once we do that, then the following year we can ask for those construction dollars. And so there's already kind of a roadmap that the commission has in front. It's just, again, going out and identifying and being able to reconfirm this is the direction that we're going on a yearly basis.
And to hit on something you just said that was really important, one of the reasons why you were able to make that request so quickly for the rec center was we had completed that project. It was basically, I guess the term people will use is shovel ready. Like we had gotten it to a point that you were able to say, it's not just a desire of this community, we have it planned. Like we know what it will cost, we know what it will entail, and we already know what we want from the project. We were prepared. So it's another thing for us to keep in mind that we need to always be having things to a certain point so we can say, not only do we want it, but we're prepared to address it. I want to echo what Judy said, because clearly it's, Mario's right, it's infrastructure for us, right? I'm good, thank you. And water's got to be our top priority. I mean, we're just, waiting to go. We're a village going underwater here. But I also support the solarizing of the village and all of those things. So I'd like us to be moving forward on getting estimates and costs and how it would come together. So when the opportunity comes up, we're ready to say, look, here's a project. We know what it entails and we know what it costs. So, because if we aren't ready with those things, that slows us down in making those requests, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Now, a lot of
we
these-
had a lot of people that said, I don't understand why with all our stormwater issues, you're wasting your time getting all the information on what it's going to cost to take care of the rec center. But I mean, this is where it paid off.
is a lot of these projects, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Right.
Is a lot of these projects that we're getting, or the money that we're getting are going to have to be matching, that we're going to have to match? Because if that's matching, then we really have to think about where we're going to get the money for the matching.
Those projects up at the state level will require matching of some sort. In years, we've been able to sometimes get through with only putting a small match. Others has been 50%. That's where they like to see it, but we've been able to do both. So if we,
Because that's going to be important. I mean, it's nice to get this money, but if we don't have the money to match it, then we're going to have problems. But the two projects so far that we mentioned, I think that's, at least for me, should be the two projects that we should have on is the stormway drains again and the soda.
And for,
Stormwater is going to be, like I said, it's going to take us 25 years to do it all if we
No.
get the money. But we need to keep plugging away on that. We can't say, well, we've had 1.5 from the feds and 300,000, we're done. We're barely beginning.
So I-
Just
And
barely
all of that,
scratched
by
the
the way, as Mario
I,
reminds us
I
every
think
time,
it's,
are holes in the ground holding water. They really aren't a solution. They're a stopgap measure at best.
correct.
I make a recommendation, just a recommendation, a discussion that those are the two items that if this commission agrees, that we can put as our two priorities, so we can already have two priorities already set.
We can definitely,
Discuss more.
we can definitely do that at the commission meeting. What I just did want to, I think we've said this several times, but just so that you all know, and we state it again here for the record, the matching funds that are required for the money that we got this year, for example, is CITT funds. And that's one of the key things that I've said from the first time we've ever met and ever spoken, is leveraging those CITT funds to get more money. And there's different ways you can do that. So in this opportunity, the backlog that CITT, that the village didn't do with CITT, rounded up enough where we were able to like, hey, look, we've got 350,000 in the bank. We're going to ask for 350,000. And the state was like, oh, okay, well, you've got skin in the game. You know, it ended up working on our benefit as we move forward. And that money is no longer in the bank at that type of totals. It's going to be a hard sell to say, hey, look, I've got on a yearly basis for transportation infrastructure, you're talking about 112,000 essentially. So it's going to be hard to say, I'm going to put 112,000, but I need $1 million. You know, that's going to be a hard sell. So that's why it may take a little bit more efforts to try to put things together and how we're going to do. And there's a larger conversation that comes into how we start funding those things. And then number two, with CIT funds at one point, and I don't think the time is right now, or maybe not even this fiscal year. So I'll caveat my next statement with that. But at one point, one of the things you can do with CITT funds is leverage any type of loan, credit, bond, or anything like that, and use those CITT funds to be able to pay it over X amount of years, right? So that will bring that money closer up front, which now you have in the bank, and then you can go to the state and say, hey, look, I got $1 million. We need another $1 million from the state. So there's different mechanisms that you can play with to be able to try to leverage something like that. The problem is that if you do that with CITT, you're basically committing those funds for a minimum, if you do $1 million for a minimum of 10 years. And normally my recommendation is don't do that, because then you've committed for 10 years for $1 million, and $1 million is not going to give you the impact that your time commitment has shored up, right? Unless you're able to pay that all off earlier. But to say for 10 years, we can't do anything because all those dollars are committed to these 4 blocks, or maybe it's 3 because prices keep going up, then it's like, was that the smart investment strategy for us to do, right? So, but I think there will be a point where the village will have to do more of a detailed in financial assessment. And that's not something that neither I nor Paul can do. I think that's going to be a financial advisor, and it's going to be a large study that will be able to say, this is, if you do a special assessment fee or like a stormwater or a drainage tax, if we want to call it, this is how much you can generate. And then you can use that kind of generation or forecast to then get a bond or any type of loan, which then now if you're doing something like that plus CITT, now you might be talking $2 million, $3 million. Then when you add on any type of state appropriations, okay, wait a minute, now we're talking about a game changer for the village, right? But those aren't easy discussions, and that's not something that from one commission meeting to the next you'll end up deciding. That's something that can be a year or two in the works before anything really kind of starts going. So I don't think that the village in this time or for this fiscal year, which is why it's not within my presentation for the budget, is there. I think right now the focus is finishing the design build that we have going on, that we've already started, and now looking at the federal dollars and start moving that project forward as fast as we can, so that once we're already in that, okay, now we know what these things take, we know how much these overruns are, so now we have, this is where the number that we need to be shooting for. How do we get there? And so that's when all of a sudden that kind of financial forecasting and study now starts coming into play, because then it gives the commission the ability to say, we need to find a way to fund $2 million. How do we fund that? Okay, these are the 10 different mechanisms that you can do that. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're even with the first project, we know that we have $1 million project out on the street right now, and it's working. But is it going to come at $1 million? Is it going to come just under? At the end of the day, are we going to be at that 10% over? All of those things, we haven't had a project in this scale for many, many years. And so I think the due diligence, and from my perspective, is let's play these things out and see how these things are working before we get too far ahead. And then we've done a lot of legwork, and the beginning aspect of foundation of where we've started and where we think we've started is not where we should have been. And so we've just wasted a ton of time and work and legwork where none of that is relevant. Now we got to redo it over. And so I'd rather kind of move this goalpost logically, with knowing what our limitations are before we get to that kind of level. But there's a lot of things that we can do for these type of projects.
Now, the third thing I forgot to mention, David, that's on my list are the septic to sewer. And that kind of ties in with the storm drains, for the simple fact that you got to rip up the pavement on the street. I know Dade County has prioritized us going septic to sewer, but nobody's ever come up with any money for us. And we've got the canal right here running right through our town, and they're all concerned about it. But this is going to be a major thing.
I can actually just give you a quick update on that. I had a meeting with the county this week. One of the main reasons why the county hasn't had any funding or anything to help anybody with this is because they never did what's called a RAP, and I forget what it stands for, but it's a type of study that needs to be done countywide. Other counties throughout the state have done it, and they've been getting funds, tens of millions of dollars to move these type of projects forward. The county never had anything. And so when they found out last year, they quickly moved a project into motion. We are within that. They are also looking to see how else they can assist us and thinking outside of the box, as opposed to just, hey, we're going to need this and here you go. That vulnerability assessment study that we got a grant for is going to help. They're doing their own version of it countywide. So in that aspect, we'll be able to do, and then they'll start looking at where being able to obtain funds and what communities, their 5, 10, 15, 20-year plans, all that, they're working through that. The way that the county will prioritize septic to sewer is not by municipality. They're not doing that. The way that they're doing it is more from a technical aspect. So they're going to look at what communities are closest to waterways, right? And then they're going to work about 1,500 feet away from that kind of coast, right? So we have a canal. So they'll say, okay, we can prioritize Biscayne Park 1,500 feet away from the canal, which will basically be 6th Avenue West and Griffin, along Griffin, and then some houses inland from Griffin south of 113th. But it won't be the whole community. Eventually it will be, but if a first project were to come, it would only be for those homes because those are the ones that directly impact the canal, where the rest of the homes inland, yes, they suffer from flooding and all these things, but it's not a direct impact to the waterways because it's not next to an actual waterway. So that's how they're looking at it. It's good because we'll have some that are starting to transfer over. It's bad because odds are 15 years from now, we'll still be waiting from the county. So there's still, there's little things that we can try to do. And even then, even if the county says, okay, Biscayne Park, we're ready to go, we're going to move everything forward, we're going to do all this. Their policy is, and I've started trying to plant a seed, but their policy is, municipality, you got to do a 50% match. That's not feasible for us, period. These projects cost tens of millions. If we've got $1 million project for these little French drain systems that we're putting in, a sewer system, which you're going to be digging 25, minimum 25 feet, not minimum, I'm sorry, up to 25 feet down below at the deepest part. And then if they do gravity-based construction, and then it's going to go all the way down to that area where you'll have the pump stations and stuff like that. It's very intrusive construction. I started my career in these types of projects. And then two, it's extremely, extremely costly. And so I flat out told the county, I go, look, I don't know how we would do that. And I go, I think you need to start looking at different ways, because it's okay to tell Miami, hey, we want 50% match. It's okay to tell Palmetto Bay, it's okay to tell Pinecrest that you want a 50% match. There's no possible way. And because of the way that Biscayne Park is structured does not mean that our residents should suffer and have a lower quality of life. And they were accepting those comments. They were like, no, you're absolutely right. It's not in a position. So they have been trying to think outside of the normal box and seeing what can be done to further expedite that and to be able to do it. And I said, look, maybe it's a way of, we're just lumped in when you're doing the two communities to the east and to the west of us that are unincorporated. I mean, it's not an additional aspect here. And, if you need a lot that needs to house this type of pump stations and stuff like that, we have one here on 113th Street. That might be a good lot to put some kind of infrastructure in that's going to house. So all of a sudden that's land value, and we're almost trying to trade, right? So I said, I'm sure the commission would be open to that kind of conversation. But again, we're very far off before anything. I think in their request to the state for money, if they use Biscayne Park, it will be for a concept development or design within the next 10 years, and then construction after that 10 years. So at a bare minimum, we're minimum 10 years before having a serious project on our hands to consider for septic to sewer.
Thank you, Mario. The other thing I wanted to let you know, David, is I know Ginny and I have been going to a lot of the League of Cities meetings. I've been going to the League of Cities Board of Directors meetings as much as I can. So we are keeping with League of Cities. We are letting them know that we are there. We are letting them know. I know they just came up with a thing that the county wanted to basically take away our rights to the land adjacent to the railroad tracks for like a half a mile on either side and zone it all high density. And League of Cities went in, we all had a meeting and we kind of blasted at it. And they said, small cities like ours that are strictly residential are exempt, single family homes bordering that and duplexes are exempt. So that pretty much exempts our village, because I said, that's half of our village. How can you do this to us? So they went in, and just pretty much blasted. And I don't know how many people know what League of Cities is, but we have very little power in our county being this big in a county this big. And that pairs us with bigger municipalities, although City of Miami doesn't tend to attend as much, but Doral, Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, Florida City, Homestead tend to all group in together with Miami Gardens and a few other municipalities and El Portal. And they get everybody's opinion on it, and they go and do our fighting for us with a much bigger voice than what our little village can do. And I've been very impressed by what they come up with and how they take on the county like a charging bull. It's great.
David, you wanted to show where people can keep track of
Yeah.
bills and all this.
So for example, like, I know there, like, sometimes you all might have individual issues that might be of importance to you. What I would suggest is each house, the Florida House and the Florida Senate, have a home website. So if you go Florida House, click on it, you'll go to the Florida House site, like you see right here.
myfloridahouse.gov.
And if you see up there, it says bills, you can just, click on that. And what'll happen is you'll start seeing as the new year comes in, that's 2022, but as the new year comes in, they'll start filing bills and they'll get all added to that list. So if you ever want to occasionally have some downtime, you want to go to that list, you could just go through it and say, oh, wait, that looks interesting. And then you can click on it. If you click on whatever's there now, it'll give you a whole breakdown of the bill. See that? It says what it really does. It talks about the committees that it was referred to. It'll go through any Senate bills or House bills that are similar. It'll go to the analysis that the staff has done. So it'll give you a clear understanding of the bill. And you can get a lot of information and data from that site and from both of those sites on the bills. Yes, absolutely. So I just wanted to point that out.
The Senate is flsenate.gov. And it works very similarly. Their bill portion, that whole search site, is at the very top of their homepage so that you can see this here. And then they also have it broken down by senators, committees, sessions, laws, all that kind of stuff. So you can just either search some keywords, or if you know the actual chapter and stuff or the bill number, you can look for all that information there. And then again, I brought this up when he was talking about the Florida League of Cities, but floridaleagueofcities.com is the website. And so you'll start seeing their advocacy page on the issues, their toolkits, their bill summaries, all of those type of things. The staff review or analysis that a bill may have is, for the most part, trying to be looked at from a administrative neutral position. Right? They're not trying to say that this bill is good or that this bill is bad. They're looking at, this is the intent of the bill, this is the budget that it impacts, and this is the result. Sometimes they'll say 0 budget impact, and everybody flips out because that's not true. The budget that it impacts, they say 0 because it doesn't impact the state budget, but it impacts municipal budget, or it impacts agency budget or something like that. And so, a lot of times you might see some language in those analysis where you're like, wait a minute, this would mean that we would lose XYZ and we can't do this anymore. And that's a budget. Those are unfunded mandates, essentially, is what they're kind of called, right? But for the state, it's a 0 impact. And then when you look at,
and if you go to the end of those analysis, you might sometimes see municipal impact, and then it might tell you severe impact or minimal impact or no impact. And so sometimes they'll do that.
And so when you come to Florida League of Cities and you see, or when oftentimes during session, when I've sent you all the reports and they're like 40 pages long, because it lists every one that is done, and that's worked through Florida League of Cities and even David's analysis. You see that the analysis of a bill is different, because the analysis that you're receiving from Florida Leagues and from David is, how does this impact local municipalities? And so that's the lens that it's being looked upon. It's not looked from a neutral perspective. It's looked on, can this benefit or hurt how local government works? Does it affect home rule? Does it diminish it? Does it take away control? Does it give more control? All of those type of things is what they're looking at it when they're doing their analysis. And that's why you'll see we support, we don't support. Sometimes they'll do a neutral. They're like, yeah, it's a law, it's beneficial. It's not really going to impact you that much. So sometimes, you just got to know who the author is and what lens they're writing it under, to really get that full context of what that bill is.
And also, when you go through the bill, you want to take a look at, even though you go to the analysis and it might suggest something, that was based on the bill as it was presented going into committee. We work sometimes and we file amendments to change those bills. So you got to go to then that page to the amendments, see what's been filed and what's been accepted, because that could completely change the analysis based on the work we're doing too. And then the next time it comes out, goes into the next committee, then that analysis will take into consideration any changes that it might have. So you might look at it and go, oh, no, oh my God, it's going to affect this. No, we've already worked out. They've already got an amendment. The amendment was approved. Wait till the next committee.
And the Florida League, just to one last caveat for you all to know, they're not going to make a recommendation or anything with regards to how a bill that affects an individual municipality for a budget request or anything. They don't get into that. They only look at policy type of bills, and then they move whether to support or not support. They'll take their analysis to their board or their committee, and then they will take a vote. And the committees are made up of elected officials throughout the state of various municipalities. And then once they take a vote from the board, then that's when they'll say, hey, our position as League of Cities is that we support or we don't support. It's not just someone in office deciding, oh, I want to do it one way or another. It's a board of elected officials throughout the state that take all those things into consideration.
And also just to know and feel comfortable, as a legislation comes through, if it's bad, if it has an impact, I mean, the manager knows what's bad and good for the municipality. So he already sees what's going on. I've already discussed it with him. So know that while you might be seeing what's going on, we're already working to defeat it or to change it, or because that all happens with us up there. So we're already meeting with people saying, yeah, this can't happen. You got to change it to this. And then we sit down and we work out language and present it. So you always know that whatever happens, you can feel comfortable that the manager knows what's good and what's not good for a municipality. Because I know each of you might say, oh, we need to change this. This can't be. And yeah, we know that. But it's also important for you to understand it as well. And then if we need you to go and voice your opinion up there, then we'll suggest that. My report.
David, personally, I would like to thank you very much for all the work you've done. I've been here since 1996. I've seen your face around a lot.
Sorry about that.
A few times here and there every year, but I really appreciate the work you put in for us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I think I already made my comments in
Thank you
reference
so
to that.
much. You're wonderful.
Yes,
Thank you.
just continue to keep, but just like I said, please keep us informed of even the ones that are going to fail, or if something that you think is not going to be a good idea to bring up.
Yes.
So we save time from us discussing it. I want
Absolutely.
to pick items, like already we have 2 items I think is good items to pick. I want us to pick items that are going to benefit the village, but has a chance of passing.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you.
So at this point, Mario, would you like us each to kind of just run down the list of, I mean, Judy's kind of done hers informally. Maybe she has more things she wants to share. I don't know. But do you want us to each just kind of quick run down a list of anything that we're thinking? Just so we have an idea. I know we're not making any decisions today and voting on things certainly, but just kind of where we are in our own heads.
I'll leave that up to you all as to whether that's a discussion you guys want to have now.
I would love to hear what
budget
else
or-
you guys are thinking of. Judy, is there any, you've been very clear about solar and water. Is there anything else on your mind? Solar.
The only other one that I would have added, but I think you already explained, is the septic tanks. That's going to take years to have. So it's almost like, I don't know if, I don't,
Where you mean?
yeah, I don't know if it's worth even pushing that now.
I mean, it's good to have that dialogue. I know when Senator Jones is interested, and I know Senator Pizzo was, at the time, but maybe there is an avenue at the state level too, where they can put together a lot of the smaller communities and maybe generate some funding to help the smaller communities be able to achieve those goals sooner. But That's a conversation we'll have to continue to have.
My thought with putting it out there for you, David, was in case something came up that you saw, you knew, oh, wait a minute, didn't Biscayne Park say that they're going to be dealing with this issue? Not that we're going to necessarily attack it, but that if you see something coming up that we could piggyback onto or get a part of, that you know that, I mean,
This is a big issue for a lot of folks. So this is a top issue right now
and
for a lot
And
of.
sometimes it could be just something he might unearth something that would take a bite out of the apple for us.
Right.
It may not be the apple, but it could be, there's money available for communities. I'll make something up here to do the studies required to be prepared to da, 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 da. So there could be, it moves us in that direction. So again, to the rec center example, again, we were prepared. So we were very fortunate there. We had something ready to show to somebody. So if, and you know, we don't know what he's going to find out, but if he knows sort of where our minds are on that, he can present pieces of it to us as well.
And I think it's really important for the people in this village to realize that infrastructure had not been addressed for years and years and years and years before we came in. And, you know, we have our issues and we have a little infighting and whatever, but we all seem to understand that our infrastructure is of critical importance and we all seem to want to work towards that same goal. And I think that that puts us at an advantage that we can overcome whatever personal, just to say, this is what our village needs. Let's just look for it.
Ginny, what's on your list?
You have any on your list?
Okay.
What about lighting around the village? Okay.
To me, that's such a small ticket item compared to the rest. And there, you're gonna have to take it block by block because half the people hate more lighting and the other half want
I
it.
think that's the truth. Well, I
So-
think if Dan wants, we should, I mean, Dan, let's put it on the list for when we have our discussions and we can discuss it more then, because I won't disagree that there's an opportunity there, but I'm not disagreeing with what Judy just said either. So,
Yeah.
hey, Art's here and maybe he doesn't have his picture. He doesn't have his camera on now. Art, are you listening? Because this would be a time for you to. No, maybe he'll pop back in. Okay, my list is kind of short, so I'll run down my list real quickly. I have it in sort of categorized, and the first one is maybe the category heads don't make sense, but my first category is water management, and it includes the drains, the sewer conversion, streets, all of one. The canal seawall, I don't know where all of that comes into play, but it's part of the management of water around here. And then I just have other general flooding mitigation and response matters. Under the heading of safety, keeping in mind that we're a 100% residential community and we don't have sidewalks, we're having an internal conversation about safety, and it's on the August agenda. It's coming back up, and it would involve studies and things. So if there was money out there to help us with traffic studies and the things to help us prepare for what we would want to do once we decide to do it, I'd be very interested in knowing about that. So anything regarding traffic studies and traffic control. And then I have a green heading, basically all the things that impact our impact on the environment and our footprint on this world. And that would include the solarizing of buildings and going electric in terms of our vehicles and equipment and all of those things as well. We're burning a lot of fossil fuels in this village, spending a lot of money on fuel to run things, and there are better ways to do it these days. And I know you're still working on the emergency generator and the gas lines that come into play with that as well. And then some other social issue kind of things. I just would appreciate hearing, you know, being made aware of things come up that you think we might be interested in knowing, in addition to us having access online to seeing the policies that are being worked on. So that's my short list, and it's a duplicate of what much of what you guys said, but I guess my only thing I added that's completely new is the safety aspect of things. Thanks.
Perfect.
Art's still there, but I guess he may have stepped out.
Yeah, he may have stepped away. Okay, I think we've had a pretty good discussion today with regards to what the process looks like. you know, if it's okay with the commission, I know we're not taking a vote or anything, but we can definitely make this, as I meet with you next week, in preparation for the August 18th, you know, we'll go over this again. That way it can be a part of the discussion for the August 18th budget workshop. And I think we'll also start talking about, if the commission wishes to accept my recommendation of maybe bringing this back as an actual item for the December, to actually set the vote as to these are our priorities. If you can find a project or something to push, we can talk about it leading up to it. But, you know, I think that's going to be the right time, because we'll know who's in the House, who's in the Senate, and then we'll also have the new commission here as well. We have 3 seats available that are open. Best of luck to any candidate, but it gives that commission also an opportunity to weigh in, which in the past, this commission has always been open to hearing from that commission once it's elected. So I think that's a good opportunity. We don't need a motion, we don't need a vote or anything, but I think it gives us kind of a path of how we're moving forward.
And have it brought back for December will give us still plenty enough time for the legislature.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay.
Oh, yeah. They probably, more than likely, they won't be the deadline for submitting of a state appropriation probably won't be until minimum, maybe end of January, sometime in February, because session isn't going to really be starting until.
Now,
Yeah.
is there any recommendation that commissioners participate up there, or can we leave it up to you to do it?
Well, if you don't mind, David, it's always beneficial to have the commission travel to Tallahassee to talk with the elected officials, mainly because although you stop by your local representative, right, and you give them the courtesy, you're there to mainly be talking to the committee members where the bill is going from. As always, it's always harder to say no to someone's face, and so if they can put Biscayne Park and they can connect the face, and knowing that we're engaged and we're ready, that's always, you know, beneficial. Now, traveling to Tallahassee is expensive, especially during those times. And so if the entire commission were to go for 1 or 2 days, I would estimate between flights and hotel, you're talking about $6,000 to $10,000.
So I know that in the past, we have taken travel out of the budget for commissioners. So now, that's why I was asking you, if you're thinking that commissioners need to participate by travel, that's something that we're going to have to look at keeping in the budget.
David, I do have friends in Tallahassee, and I do get to Tallahassee 3 or 4 times a year. So if there's anything you need for me to get up there for, I'm certainly happy to call my buddies and say, hey, I'm coming in for a visit.
Well, you know, it's wonderful opportunity for y'all to see what actually goes on versus what you hear goes on. It's quite an experience up there, and it's quite a process. You'll walk out of there going, wow, that really happens, or is that how it's done? Or, you know, but yes, if you can, you don't have to have everybody go. If you all want to assign one person or something, you can do that.
Everybody went, that wouldn't be a sunshine violation, would it?
No, well, so what happens is the way we work that is you cannot have 2 of you meet at the same time in one of the meetings. So what'll happen is you'll each get a meeting, and then you'll come in with me and the manager and talk. And then the next meeting, someone else will go in, which is why you don't necessarily have to have everybody up there. If you all want to assign like yourself or whoever to actually come up one time and just go through and talk about our issues, it's always good to be there. It's always, like manager said, good to see a face with the community. So if you're up there often, certainly, you know, what I'll do is you let me know, and then I'll set up meetings. So what I do is I set an agenda for the day or two, and then we hit those meetings and we talk about our appropriations issues. We talk about some of the issues on policy side that may impact you. And it's a good thing for them to see you.
Yeah.
So the timing on that would be after so.
Yeah, that'll start back. That'll
the
start
first of the
sometime in
year.
February.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to back up for a second, Mario, you're going to have this on our December agenda for us to make our final short list, but prior to that, you'll put it on whatever meeting agendas it needs to
Yeah.
be on for discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so December, and you're cool with the December, you would be handed okay. And then after the first of the year, February or later is when direct engagement would happen.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
And then, and David, Thank you so much. I don't know if the commission remembers last November, when I was doing a certain leadership training after the commission meeting, I went to Tallahassee for my leadership class. And while I was there, David was able to make a couple appointments for me with regards to a couple committee members that our bill was going to be in front of. At that point, we had already submitted that application for the stormwater and stuff. So thank you for planning that. It was a good opportunity for them to at least see somebody. It didn't cost the village anything because it was part of a class that I paid personally, but we took advantage of the time. So as a commissioner, though, it's a little different. And I'll verify with Valerie, but if a commissioner is going to go to Tallahassee, and it's not as a group, right, then I think the commission should authorize that commissioner to speak on behalf of the board, right? And so it's a little bit different. We would notice and put out on the calendar that Commissioner so-and-so is going to be, if there's more than one of you, we'll obviously notice that, the meeting is happening. Gets a little tricky because it's going to be something that would happen in Tallahassee and not localized. So it's not like you can have the public come with you. But there are
They've been noticed.
exactly
The commission would have decided who the person would be and some
correct.
talking points kind of thing. So we
Exactly.
also agree on the message.
Correct.
It's a pretty standard process.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody, for taking your time, for coming on Saturday morning, especially in the summer. I apologize we couldn't do it during the week, but with the budget and the way that all these meetings are happening, we just couldn't fit it in. So thank you, everybody. And I look forward to talking to everybody throughout the week for the next budget workshop. Our next commission meeting is on August 16th, which is a Tuesday. And the next budget workshop is on August